I'm the Reverend Dr. Laura Kim Joyner.
And I'm Meredith Garman, Reverend Doctor also.
We have been gone a while, haven't we? Where did we go?
We went to Honduras. You were there 3 weeks. I was there for the last week of that with you.
And I was doing parrot conservation.
And we also visited family. It was a lovely time.
It was so good to be with them, but it's great to be back with you all. Thank you for joining us. This is a live and interactive show, even more live and interactive once we're off of mute, don't you think?
Well, we were live, but we weren't terribly interactive if you couldn't hear us talking.
We weren't terribly. So put your questions and comments into the comment sheet, and we'll just take it all. We'll be very interactive. And this is the Nurture Nature Show. So we bring up multi-species examples so we can learn to nurture ourselves, and all other species.
Nurture nature, ourselves, others, the earths.
That's right, everybody. So our theme today is reconciliation, consolation, and conflict. So why are we talking about this?
Well, and we need to know why having conflicts is important, because you might be imagining that, well, why can't we have a species where the individuals in the species get along?
Kind of like pandas hanging up in the eucalyptus trees.
Wouldn't natural selection wants to choose for people who could just get along with each other? Wouldn't that be much better for everyone to just be the kinds of organisms that don't have conflicts?
It would be nice.
We have to have conflicts because
we
humans do,
all of us
chimps do, all the social species,
because all God's creatures
because as you're working together, you also have to sort of watch your boundaries. So gotta
watch that other guy.
Have good boundaries so you don't get, because we will tend to push people around, take advantage of them if they don't stand up for themselves. And sometimes in standing up for themselves, they push back a little too hard. And so there's that give and take that produces conflict situations. It's having conflicts is a valuable way that we negotiate the business of being a social species. In many species, just having the conflict and it ends with somebody retreating, and that's the end of the matter. But with humans, and other species that are highly social like that, there needs to be a process to rebuild the relationship. It's not enough to just push them beyond the boundary, but to do so, to establish your boundary, but in a way that also reaffirms there's a friendship here. You have to go back to we're still friends, right? We're still friends.
We have to heal that. And we work as ministers, and so we know that conflict is normal and natural. It's going to happen in complex species, and we have to deal with it. Otherwise it festers. We're not really sure we got over it, and it can do damage across generations. And that's why humans have formed truth and reconciliation commissions, and they have formal processes to remember the hurt of the past and to make reconciliation consolation, so we know that we can go forward. And it's kind of a formal process, isn't it?
That's a very elaborate bureaucratic
system. How do
system.
chimps do it then?
Well, the chimps, you may be surprised to know this, but chimps do not form commissions.
Chimp commissions?
No, actually, Franz de Waal was writing about this in his latest book, Mama's Last Hug. He says, during reconciliation after fights, chimpanzee males are eager to groom their rivals behind.
Who wouldn't?
Which may lead to awkward 69 positions if they're both reconciling at the same time.
So is that a little bit like when human partners have a fight, they immediately go jump into bed and have mad sex? Is that a similar biology?
There isn't an implication that this behind grooming is a sexual thing. I know that that's where you want to think that it goes. Especially since I said 69, but actually it may not be at all sexual. It's just the way they signal that we're still friends. There's reconciliation that's happening.
I heard, because we were reading the Franz de Waal book together, is that, why do they do the butt? Why do they do the business end of things? And there's a lot of smell and a lot of things that's going on there. And when animals are scared, their scent comes through the feces. So paying attention to that end of thing helps you know what your partner's thinking, and the person you've been in fighting with. And I guess the idea is, if somebody's willing to put their face in your butt, you kind of know they want to make up and it's going to be okay. But if they don't do that, if you're a chimp, then you're never quite sure trusting where you stand with that other chimp.
Even among chimpanzees, it's intimate. It may not be sexual, but it's pretty intimate. And so
Yeah.
that's intimacy with another being helps build the
In
bonds.
vulnerable areas.
In a
Because dogs will
vulnerable
flip
area.
over and show their stomach after they've had a little fight. I'm kind of glad that humans don't do that. But Franz de Waal says, well, maybe
But
there's
if we did, you'd be glad that we did.
because I
Because
yeah.
it would be what felt natural and worked for you.
Work do with that. And Franz de Waal suggests that maybe there is some connection because we have the terms like brown nosing and ass licking is a way for people to make up and for the less powerful to make sure they're getting along. So maybe there is
Yeah,
something
but
that we
and
carry
those are
on with
terms
us.
of contempt. So third parties don't really want to see the reconciling with a superior because
We-
they feel left out then.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. So that's how Chimps do it. And then but then Franz de Waal goes on about saying that third parties get involved with the chimps. What's going on there?
Well, sometimes there's something a little different from conciliatory processes, and there's consolation, where the aggressed party receives consolation from a third party. And interestingly, in chimpanzees and bonobos, the consolation is triggered with or signaled with a hug, whereas reconciliation is often done with kisses,
Yeah.
with peers or with a superior on the hierarchy.
And I think what they find out is that the lowering of stress and the greater post affiliation of conflict is actually greater when it's one-on-one on the two that is fighting. The females or other ones that might come in and help say get over it and lead the chimp over to the other chimp to make up, that it's actually stronger if it's initiated and done by the actual two people that are the two chimps that were fighting.
Right, and we know that we all feel intuitively in our own relationships that if it's
Shake
coming,
hands, apologize,
and
Roger.
right, and when mom makes Roger do that,
Yeah.
that's never as authentic as if
Right.
if it comes from Roger's.
Right.
But it's still better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's still, if Roger won't do it, it's a good
Right.
idea for mom to do a little gentle coercion.
Now, chimps don't always reconcile. There's some revenge. There's some eye for an eye, and we know that people do that too. That they, after someone's been harmed, they want to harm the people that harmed them. And what was that study with voodoo dolls? That people felt better after they stabbed a sharp pin into dolls that looked like the people they were in conflict with. It feels good to not reconcile.
Yeah, people. That was a study on humans,
Right.
So we want to be clear that there was no study that we know of involving chimpanzees or other apes stabbing voodoo dolls. And I also want to just clarify or add that it might feel temporarily a little better, but on the long run, it's just encouraging you in anger and hostility.
Right to do that. And some primates like rhesus macaques and baboons, they don't do a lot of reconciliation, and they do a lot of revenge because they don't have as plastic of a hierarchy. So if you try to reconcile with someone who has more power and is bigger than you could get really beat up, and it's dangerous. So what I understand what a lot of primate species do is they go and pick on the less powerful that are in the same matrilineal. They're in the same women's hierarchy, and they'll go beat up on your friend. They can't beat up on you. They're going to go beat up on your friend.
Because he's lower down on the hierarchy.
Lower down on the hierarchy, and that's
like a guy whose boss yells at him, comes home and kicks the dog.
Yeah. So
somebody that's just a little lower down.
So we're not always tuned in to reconciliation. There's this revenge piece that we share with other apes.
And there's taking it out on third parties.
Taking it out on third
parties. That sometimes happens too.
So other species do this as well, do reconcile. They found it in birds. They found it in rooks and ravens and parrots.
And wallabies.
But can we talk about the birds first?
Yes, talk about the birds.
Okay. So they do it, but like rooks and ravens, and also they found this out with parrots, is that the reconciliation is mostly between valuable relationships, such as your partner. They're very strongly bonded with their partners, and not so much with this generally big flock. So they tend to not, if they get in a fight, they just let it go, because they don't really need to put in the effort to make up for it, because they don't really need the other birds as much as they need their really close family group.
Their thought about that kind of conflict is the way many humans might regard certain conflicts. And their attitude is, well, forget you.
I don't want to buy, this is too hard.
Just forget you.
Yeah, I don't want to do
Just,
this.
I'm just going to push you out of my mind. I'm not going to worry about
Yeah, I don't have to
rebuilding
see
this
you again.
relationship. I'm just dismissing it.
Yeah, I don't have to do that. So rooks and ravens and parrots do that. Now, wallabies, maybe you should explain to people what wallabies are.
Wallabies are like little kangaroos.
Yeah.
Wallabies are to kangaroos as bonobos are to chimpanzees. They're
Right.
like the miniature version.
Right.
But as kangaroos got something of a reputation for boxing,
They do fight.
wallabies
Yeah.
will fight. They will sort of rock back on their legs and punch out.
Well, and the study that came out in the late 2000s was that, yes, they do reconciliation, but again, they mostly do it with their close partners because they said the society of wallabies is not overly complex. So there's not a lot of interaction. But when they do fight, what they find out is that the wallabies will sometimes choose not to reconcile, and they believe it's based on whether they feel they're in danger. Are they going to get beat up if they go try and reconcile? So they'll choose, is it worth it? And they often just blow it off because, it's not worth the risk of getting hurt.
So here's my question. Do we think they're carrying a grudge?
Do they remember? I bet they remember.
But are they carrying a grudge? Or do they just sort of blow it off and not care much about it?
I don't know about wallabies. Chimps certainly remember. Humans remember.
Let me ask you the question this way.
Okay.
You talked earlier about how sometimes revenge is sought.
Mm-hmm.
Do wallabies ever seem to seek revenge?
I don't know.
And in those species that do seek revenge, what's the longest delay that we might see? How much time might go between a slight and revenge for that slight?
Well, we should remember that, and I don't have the answer. People, you can write it in, let us know on Facebook. We do know that humans, one version of Great Ape, can remember for a very long time. And we know that memory of dogs and parrots and elephants is really long. They remember, and they remember those who've harmed them.
And we like to go to movies in which the character plots an elaborate revenge that doesn't come to fruition until years and years down the road.
So let's sum up. What does all this mean for humans? I'm picking out a couple lessons. One is it works better. We didn't talk about this much when the actual two that were involved in the conflict do it and not a third party. But
it still has some effectiveness when there's a third party helper.
That's right.
A mediator,
like with humans. We also want to do it when it's safe. So like wallabies and with the baboons, humans also need a safe process. That's why we have a formal process, so it's safe, so we can make up. And we tend to reconcile in relationships where it matters to us, and that's true with other species.
Right.
That's true. So those are some of my take home.
We put more energy into the relationships that matter more.
Yeah,
that are closer to us.
So if we thought that all life mattered, then we'd put in the effort to reconcile and diminish conflict with all of life.
Well, we don't have infinite amount of energy to put into relationships.
Right. So sometimes we're just not going to make up with the bird that poops on our windshield. We're just going to let that go.
Yeah, well, if we could repair that if there was a relationship there to repair, then we might tend to it.
Okay, well, shall we move on to our conservation news for the week? We always do a little bit of conservation news and
multi-species minutes.
Well, no, let's do the conservation news first.
Oh, okay.
Let's do that. I switched the order. So
okay.
And the conservation news is we were in Honduras. I was working in the project in La Mosquitia. We're up to about 120 nests, scarlet macaw nests that we are protecting. The birds are nesting 1 month later than they usually do. Is that because of the heavy rainfall this year? Was it because of the 2 hurricanes? Climate change? We don't know. Another thing that we found is we found nests with 3 chicks, usually, or all the time, we only find 2 surviving chicks, but this time we found 3 chicks. And so we have to pull those 3 chicks because they almost always die. So that's a new thing that we discovered in Honduras, La Mosquitia. It's a big project. It's about 1.1 billion acres, a lot of nest protecting going on. And the hard part about this project is I flew over from Tegucigalpa to Puerto Limpiera to get to this area. And you fly over the last remaining, one of the second largest forest tract in all of Central America. And remember, before it was an even carpet of green trees all the way. This time it was ranch, some trees, ranch, some trees. We are
like a checkerboard down there.
We are losing that forest, and people are trying really hard to save it. And it's a really hard thing. So it was a hard trip. So there's Honduras. So get on our website. We're going to be giving out information on what you can do to help slow down the deforestation to help protect parrots. So find us on our website. So you have some news that happened this past week.
Multi-species minute.
Yeah, what's going on?
Joshi is a Western Lowlands gorilla in the UK, born in the UK and raised in a wild animal park in Kent. He is being released in the wild. He's 13 years old,
Never
has
been
never
to
been in the
Africa.
jungle, and yet 13 years old, he's still got a long life ahead of him. And the success of this kind of thing is really kind of impressive. This one foundation has reintroduced over 70 gorillas from both in situ populations and outside, and 95% annual survival rate and over 30 births in the wild from released animals.
That is really amazing, because reintroduction or release programs with mammals and with birds and animals can be really problematic. They don't often have the tools and the social connections to know how to eat, to know where to breed, to find your friends, all the hierarchy,
Right.
conflict, and sociability that we've been talking about. They haven't established all that.
And a species as intelligent as gorillas has an awful lot of learning that goes into how they're able to survive. So before reintroduction into the wild, these animals had to be coached by human coaches about how to be a wild gorilla.
Just like we need to be coached on how to be a human, how to deal with conflict, how to know what to eat right. We all need support.
And that takes us back to Roger, shake hands.
Right, come on, just know how to do that. So after all these wonderful news and hard news, talking about conflict and reconciliation, this is the time of our show where we pause and we just try to still that inner chatter and connect to something greater than ourselves. And it's really, really brief. So this time we're going to do multi-species empathy, and imagine that you are Joshi. And you're in your acclimation cage and you're looking out over the forest. You can close your eyes if you want. And you're imagine yourself as a lowland gorilla. You're looking out over the forest. You can smell the humidity, and in the distance you can see the troop of gorillas that you're soon going to join. And you're anxious, and you start scratching, because that's a common sign of anxiety in many species. And you start scratching, and you get a smell of them, and then you imagine yourself with a family, with a mate, with companions. And so there's anxiety and a longing that was born into your bones. And you breathe deep. You take in all that is, knowing that there are hard times coming and wonderful times coming. You are a beautiful gorilla, and you belong in the wild, and you will end up there. We should do that with ourselves too. Imagine that we're a beautiful great ape, a human.
Yeah.
All the anxiety and all the wonder out there. That's all who we are. And we're going to embrace that. And we're just going to embrace the conflict.
Well, and for humans, how we label ourselves has a big effect. If we label this experience we're having as being excited, then that's a very different orientation from calling it being anxious. Even though the physiological processes may be the same, it gets oriented in a certain way by the way we label it. And I'm guessing Joshi didn't have those labels. And so if you're imagining yourself in Joshi's position,
you have to,
what's it feel like to not even call it anxious or excited, but to just feel it.
Just feel it. And I know we do that when we go out and we look at birds as part of a multi-species empathy practice, as birds beyond words. You want to even try to describe what we're feeling as a bird if we were one, or what they are. We just move and are with them, and we let our bodies just experience it without the labels, because our bodies are so very, very smart. So I guess our take home for today is breathe deep, know that there's conflict, find ways to reconcile so that you can nurture all that you can and all the species. And we're going to be back next week.
And notice the people around you and the way that unconsciously perhaps they are reconciling. The way that we laugh with each other is often a
Oh,
reconciliatory gesture.
that's right. And so we laugh a lot in this household because we've got a lot we got to work on here. So next week we're going to work on more. It will be at the same time. Join us on Zoom. Connect with us before we get on. So we'll answer questions during the week, and we're open to ideas about our coming themes. And so until we meet again next week, remember that you're an animal.
So act like it.
Well, you can't help it.
So help it.
Until next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.